Hello and welcome everyone. Good evening. So I'm back again with a interesting session, which will be the part of our Google Geeks Olympics. So first of all, just give me a confirmation if I'm clearly audible as well as I'm clearly visible. Just write down yes in the chat box if everything from my end works perfectly fine. Okay, I hope I'm clearly audible as well as visible. Okay, thank you for the confirmation. So are you guys excited for today's session? Because during this entire month we'll be coming back to back with an interesting session with the industry mentors and uh, basically tech expert, right? Pro teach C programming basic. Okay, so regarding that, this session is not going to be regarding that part. Okay, so before moving to the other part of the session, I would like to tell you everybody, like, do register for Geek Olympics. If you have not registered at Geek Olympics, you are missing out a lot of things, right? Okay, thank you, Dharya. So do register and take the best out of it, right? This is the best time to be consistent in an entire month. There are many activities going on at Geek Olympics. So I'll be just sharing quickly the glimpse of what you will be getting at Geek Olympics. Okay, I hope my screen is also visible. So this is the Geek Olympics dashboard. You can take a look at this dashboard. There are many different events available. Okay, so basically with interesting events, you will be able to learn new and new things, right? So just simply going through theoretical part and just learning each and every day is not interesting, but something extra activity along with the learning phase is very much interesting, right? And there will be different offers available each and every day, and if you are looking forward to pursue any kind of course, you can have a look at the offer of the day, and these are the courses for which offer is available today, and each and every day you will be getting a session, and the details about the session will be available over here on the page itself. Okay, you can observe over here, the details will be available regarding the session as well. So that was all about Geek Olympics, I guess. You got okay. So Karthik says he's excited. So from the title of this video, everyone might have used Netflix, right? And everyone might have done binge watching. Yes or no in the chat box. And also write down which is your favorite web series from Netflix. Just write down which is the web series you like watching on Netflix, and we'll be getting onto this session. Okay. Okay. I see nobody watches Netflix, or is it so? Okay, so leaving that part aside, so today we have Syed Muzamil, who is a full stack developer at WealthUp, and he has expertise in many different technologies like Node.js, Flutter, MongoDB, uh, Microsoft, GitHub, Git, and much more. Okay, so he'll be giving you the idea about how the Netflix works, and he'll be giving you a broad idea. Jack Ryan, yeah, that's one of the interesting series. So let's welcome our mentor today, Syed Muzamil. Hi, Syed.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Jay. Yeah, hi, everyone. Yeah, I see people there. Hi, everyone. I am Saeed Muzammil. If you might have already seen previous session, you might know me. I'm a full stack developer at WealthHub, and also you might already have read the title of this video. So today's topic or session will be about big data, and we'll also just cover some things on Netflix, how they use big data, and you get the recommendation, and then keep watching Netflix all the time. Um, yeah. So I think we'll start. We'll start with the big data. So before that, I will just share my screen. Yeah, let me know if it's visible. Yeah, great. Okay, so in the first part, I think we'll be mostly talking about big data, what it is, and what are the uses, what are its applications, and other kinds of things. So basically, what big data is, it is the large amount of data or data set, and the complex amount of data that cannot be effectively managed by the traditional data processing softwares, right? So basically, what big data is, if because I think today, in today's world and in today's age, everybody uses phone, right? So whenever you use phone, you use certain kinds of applications like Facebook is there, YouTube is there, Twitter is there, right? So there is a lot of data that's created, right? Whenever you click on something, whenever you watch something, skip something, or you just keep on watching something repeatedly, right? So there is the data that is just created, you can say, right? And the vast amount of data that is created daily, you can see you are going to make lots of data daily on your smartphone while you are watching YouTube, if you're reading any tweets on Twitter, or if you're going through scrolling on Facebook, you are just creating a lot of data on a day-to-day basis, right? So, and then you can just see how much data would be created by billions of smartphones each and every day, right? So that's what is actually big data, right? Now, if we'll see this big data has a huge volume. It will be of different kinds, right? It could be either text, it could be either audio, video, image, right? It could be of various variety, as well as in huge volumes. It will be coming in huge volumes, right? So there will be a lot of like velocity that this data will be coming in. So there are some certain characteristics that determine the big data. Okay. These mainly there are three characteristics which we call the three V's of big data. Okay. So if we'll see in this picture, you can see there are actually four, because nowadays there are two additional things that have been added, which is velocity and value. Okay. So we'll be just going into these things. What are they? Okay. And after that, we'll also just continue on with some other things like where we use these big data, where we use big data. Okay. And as well as we'll just also go through some real world applications of this big data. Okay. Let's first of all continue and see what actually volume is, because these are mainly the characteristics of big data. So we'll just go through each and every characteristic here. So first thing is the volume. If you like it itself tells what volume means. That means the amount of the data. Okay, the big data, whatever the amount is. Uh, as also, if you'll see big data, it already mentions big, so that means it is enormous amount of data, right? It could be in terabytes, petabytes. Okay, so that means it is really huge data. Okay, so that means whenever, let's say, you are watching you are watching Netflix, you are watching any show, you are watching any movie on Netflix, whenever you just skip something, whenever you just like, let's say sometimes you just like on something because there is a like button there as well, so you just like any series, you just like any episodes, you just skip anything, right? So whatever you do on Netflix, either you watch it, you skip it, you just continuously watch something, right? Everything gets like recorded, right? Everything gets recorded, and that is what big data is. The volume of that big data is going to be so huge, because if you see, there are about like there are millions of users watching movies, watching series on Netflix, right? So there will be this huge amount of data that will be created whenever users are going to watch anything, whenever users are going to let's say skip or whatever they are going to do there, right? So everything is going to be recorded. So that means the volume refers to the vast amount of data, that big data, right? And when we have vast amount of data, we also need to process that thing, right? So we need to process it, and that's also going to be unstructured and some other kinds of data, right? So there is always going to be the huge amount of data associated with big data. Okay, so then if we'll continue on, we'll also see this another thing there, that's called as velocity. So what does this mean? So when we are talking about big data, right, first thing is, so the data will be enormous, it will be huge amounts of data, right? It will be in petabytes, it will be in terabytes, right? So this velocity refers to whenever the data is coming, so it is coming in a great speed, in a high speed. So that means when we are using certain apps on a smartphone, right? So whenever we do some sort of clicks, so whenever we just scroll through something, right? So everything gets recorded. The speed of that record is really great. Okay, so everything gets recorded, and the amount of data is huge that it just should be recorded at like in seconds, right, or in nanoseconds, right? As well as after that, we also need to process that data in real time, right? Because we need to make certain analysis on the basis of that data, right? Whenever we'll say, if you are just going through, scrolling through the Facebook or Instagram, you're just watching some reels. Whenever you just watch a reel, because this data is created, this big data you can say, or this huge amount of data is created, so the speed of the data should be like really quick, because whenever you just watch anything on we can say Netflix or in Instagram, you will see the recommendation based upon that content that you're watching, right? So it just updates in real time, so the velocity, the speed of that thing should be really great, right? And also, if we will talk about the another V, which is variety, right? So that means the data that we like nowadays we get, or nowadays the companies get the data, right? That they analyze this big data. It is of different types. Traditionally, there was some sort of data which was stored in relational databases, but in this time, in this time, the data is in the many forms. It could be structured data, it could be unstructured or semi-structured data, right? Something like it could be text, it could be audio, it could be video, it could be image, right? It could be anything. So in order to like get the analysis, in order to get some useful information from that data should be like pre-processed, right, before getting the insights, proper things out from there. So these are the main actually V's in big data. But traditionally, or in nowadays, so an additional two V's have been added there, okay, from past few years. One is value and another one is velocity, okay. So if we'll talk about the data, right, we also want to see what the data's value is, right? Is it giving any value or not, right? Is the data truthful or not, right? Is it reliable data or not, right? Because if the data is not reliable, we are not going to get any insights out from that data, right? So that's why these other two V's have emerged from past few years. So let's see what the value is. As I already told you, value represents the intrinsic worth of the data, right? Is the data worth doing something or not? Is it like because we need to analyze, we need to discover insights from the data, so it should be worth, it should be informative to the business so that they can make certain decisions on the basis of the data, right? So it should have some sort of value, it should have some value, so that the certain organization that this data is certain organization will process this data, they will get insights, proper insights, and then based upon those insights they can make certain kinds of product decisions, right? Do they have to make certain do they have to create a different service for different kinds of users, right? Because based upon these insights, based upon these huge amounts of data, right, first of all, if it is not valuable data, then what are they going to do with this data, right? So that is the point. The data should be really really valuable. Now, if we will talk about this velocity, velocity relates to the reliability and accuracy of the data, right? Ensuring the truthfulness of data is crucial in making reliable decisions and drawing accurate conclusions, right? So, if the data is not reliable, or if it is not coming from reliable sources, we are not going to know if the data is going to give, if it is accurate or not, right? Because if the sources are not reliable, then we are not going to know if the data is accurate, right? Because if we don't have the accurate data, we are not going to make decisions based upon that data, right? So let's say I am getting some sort of data from, let's say, any source. We can just talk about Facebook. We can just talk about Instagram. But I don't know if those platforms are reliable or not. Then what am I going to do with that data, right? So the data should be versatile, right? It should be accurate, right? So that I can use that data, right? I can just draw certain insights from that data, and then I can just use those insights to just create different kinds of products from the users, right? Because if I am storing the data, if I'm analyzing that particular data and it is accurate, then I can just make predictions based upon that big data that I have gathered, right? Then I can make certain kinds of predictions. I can just give people what they want based upon that data, right? So these are actually the main things, main characteristics of big data. Okay. Now, if you will see how this data gets stored, how this data gets processed. Okay, there are certain frameworks we use if we want to analyze this big data, if we want to process, if we want to store this data. Okay, so you can see there are Kafka, there is Cassandra, there is Hadoop, and there is, as well as there is Spark, right? So these are some of the frameworks, you can say, which we use when we are just working with this big data, right? Because we need to analyze the data, we need to store the data in order to like draw certain insights, right, from this data. So we use these kinds of things when we are just using this big data, when we are just analyzing, when we are getting certain insights out of from this data. If we talk about the challenges that we face when we are talking about big data, right? Because there are certain challenges, because if you will see the enormous amount of data that we are dealing with here, so there are certainly going to be some sort of challenges that we need to face in order to like analyze or in order to work with this big data, right? So we'll see certain challenges that we face, or that the scientists that are working with this big data face. We'll just see certain challenges here. If we talk about the first thing, that is the data volume, right? As I already mentioned before in this video, this that is the characteristic of big data as well, the volume, right? The huge amount of data that needs to be processed, that makes a challenge to the organization to store, manage, and analyze it if effectively, right? Because the amount of data is really really huge, or we can say enormous. It is enormous, right? It is in petabytes, it is in terabytes. Okay, so we need some sort of way which some sort of like storage mechanism which could just easily scale, right? Because we are talking about petabytes of data, right? And we also need to analyze it properly, we need to store, manage, and do different kinds of things with this data. So that really is a challenge there, because the storage could be a problem, right? We just need a proper storage mechanism, we just need a proper like storage, you can say, system which could just scale to the moon, you can say, right? Because if it is not going to scale this huge amount of data, what we are going to do with this if it is not going to be stored somewhere, right? Because we need to analyze, we need to draw certain insights from there. So we just need a way to easily and properly store this data. Now if we talk about another challenge, that is the data curation. Okay, so what that means is we need to derive certain value from this big data, right? If we talk about this variety we already talked about in the characteristic of big data, it's about the data is going to be structured, it could be unstructured, semi-structured, like, right? So it could be in the form of audio files, video files. So we just need a mechanism, we just need a way to draw certain insights from those videos and audios, right? So that we can just analyze them properly, right? So we also need to not only that, the data could be, there could be some sort of like different types of data that we might not need there, right? So we need some sort of way, we need some sort of mechanisms to deal with the cleanness of that data, right? We need to organize the data properly, right? In order to like take these steps, that could be challenging, right? Because we just need to properly and because the amount of data is so huge, it could not be properly organized, right? It could not be properly cleaned because it is in petabytes of data, right? We don't know how much data that is, the petabytes of data, right? So we need some sort of mechanisms for cleaning, for organizing, so that the data will be clean, so that the data will be useful in order for us to like analyze, in order for us to get insights out of that data, right? So that is also challenging there, right? In order to organize the data, in order to clean the data. So that is really challenging, right? Because the amount of data, as I already told you, that is also the characteristic of big data, that there is the data is enormous, right? If we'll talk about the another challenge that data scientists could face, that is the technology advancement, right? So because this is the field where we just the technology is rapidly evolving, so the organizations need to keep up with those things, right? So let's say the new technologies like Apache Hadoop and Spark, so they handle big data, right? And companies need to keep up with those things, right? They need to use those new technologies in order to like draw insights from that, because the data amount is huge, amount of data is really really huge. So companies need to keep up with the technologies as well in order to like tackle those things, right? So because there are a lot of advancements in this field nowadays, companies also need to keep just moving with this thing. So that could also be challenging, right? Because if there is a different framework, or there are some updates with the additional previous framework they are using. Let's say some companies using Apache Hadoop, some sort of version. Now there is the new release for the version. There could be some major fixes, minor fixes as well, right? So these major fixes could cause some sort of problem. Like they need to just learn those things. They just need to tackle those things, right? So that could also be challenging. So these are some of the challenges that data scientists are going to face when they are going to use this big data. Right? They are going to analyze. They are going to try to store, organize it, do different kinds of things with this big data. They are going to just see, or they are going to find some sort of challenges there as well. Now, if we talk about the uses of big data, where this big data could be used, right? Because the amount of data is so huge that we can do certain kinds of things with this, right? As we'll be talking a bit about how, like, about the Netflix's recommendation system. Not too much, we'll not go deep into that, but we'll be just talking a bit about that as well. How they use big data to just give you personal recommendations as well. Okay, so we'll just see some of the uses that are there with this big data. Okay, first thing is the product development. Okay, so as I already mentioned about Netflix. So companies like Netflix, Procter and Gamble. So because they are going to get huge amounts of data. Not only that, so there are a lot of companies that gets huge amounts of data. You can say Google, Facebook, Instagram, right? So they get huge amounts of this data because the volume is huge. It comes in great speeds, right? There is this variety of the data and some other things, right? Now, what they are going to do is they are going to analyze this data, right? Because they are going to analyze this data in some way, so that they can just draw certain insights from there. They will just see how people are using their product. Do we need to do certain kinds of things, right? And based upon that big data, when they will get insights out from their that data, they will be they'll be properly able to determine what they need to update, what they need to what new service they want to provide to the users. Because based upon these interactions with their platform or with some other platforms where they are getting this data from, they can determine what most of the users want and what we want to give those users, right? So, as I already mentioned in this slide as well, they can anticipate customer demand and development, and develop different kinds of products based and services based upon those demands, right? Because when the data is huge, the volumes of there is these petabytes, terabytes of data. They are going to analyze and they are going to see properly what the customers want, right? Maybe based upon certain feedbacks, based upon certain interactions with different kinds of services, different kinds of platforms they interact with the customers, right? So and based upon that they can just develop their products as well. Coming to this next use case, predictive maintenance, right? So by analyzing the structured and unstructured form of data, okay, or we can say equipment logs, sensor data, other resources, because big data comes from this everything that is connected to the internet. It could be sensors, it could be mobile phones, right? And it comes in different kinds of forms. It could be structured, unstructured, semi-structured, right? As I already mentioned, the variety, it's also the characteristic of big data. So this data which comes in different forms, which comes from different sources, different streams, right? So organizations can predict different kinds of things based upon this data, right? If there could be mechanical failures, if there could be like hazards, different kinds of hazards that might come, right? So these different kinds of things could be determined based upon this big data, right? Because if we are getting some sort of server logs, we are getting some sort of equipment logs, we are getting some sort of sensor data, right? We can analyze that data. We can just see if the data, how the data is we can just analyze, we can get proper insights out from that data. And then using those insights, we can just properly see what's going on with this kind of thing, right? Let's say either it could be the sensor data we are just seeing, either it could be this we can also talk about our server logs, right? We can also see if what's happening with our server, right? And then based upon those logs, based upon that data, we can just analyze it, we can just properly see what's going on. and based upon that we can either predict if the server is going to fail, if the mechanism or if that mechanical failure might happen on a particular sensor, right? Because we are gathering the data out from those sensors, out from those machines. We can just analyze that and see different kinds of things with that data. Another use case is this customer experience, right? So what we can do is big data. We can just see and we can just improve the customer experience, right? Because if you will see the interactions users or customers make with different kinds of social media networks, different kinds of websites, right? Because everything gets captured, right? Because as I already mentioned, the big data it is in huge volume, so everything gets captured. Either you click on somewhere, you visited a particular website, right? Your call logs get your call logs are recorded, right? Or there could be other sources, right? And analyzing all this data can help personalize offers for a particular user, right? As I will just mention about the Netflix is, so how the Netflix gives the recommendations. It is based upon all these interactions you do with their platform. Either it could be watching a particular video, it could be watching like you are watching just some sort of series, you are just watching some sort of movies, right? You could be watching anything. You could be just interacting with some sort of let's say you are just trying to search for some movie or some series, right? So when you are just searching for something, when you are liking something there, when you are watching something, just when you are just leaving something there, right? Everything gets captured, right? And based upon those interactions with their platform, they are going to analyze that data, and based upon that, based upon the experience you previous experiences you had have with the website or you have with that platform, they are going to give you the recommendations, right? So what you have watched, so what you might be interested in, right? So those recommendations you get, so which also like is some sort of customer experience, right? Because customer should get the proper movies, proper series in front, right? What they are going to watch, right? Similarly, there are another use case is there that is in the machine learning field, right? As you might have already used ChatGPT and maybe some other AI tools, right? It could be Google Bard, it could be Claude's Anthropic AI, right? These different kinds of things. So they are machine learning models, right? Which are based upon NLP or whatever you will say. So what actually happens there? How they are able to predict different kinds of things, it's based upon this big data that they are fed with, right? So this big data, because it plays a crucial role in training these learning models like LLMs, these machine learning models or large language models, right? Because if you will see this chat GPT, it just gives us answers. How is it going? How is it giving us answers based upon the data it has been fed, right? Based upon these the training data, based upon all the data that it received, now it is able to give us the answers back, right? So this huge amount of data, this big data that is used to train these machine learning models, these now are able to just predict different kinds of things based upon the data that has been fed, right? So these are some use cases. There are actually much more use cases than this, so but we are just going to discuss some things in here. So we just discussed some four use cases about this: product development, customer experience, machine learning, right? And predictive maintenance, right? So we can just predict different kinds of things based upon the a big data, right? All the data that we collect, we just analyze different kinds of things. We just do certain kinds of analysis on this big data, and based upon that, we can just do certain kinds of things, right? We can just predict what is going to happen next, right? There are certain applications in the weather industries, we can say, or this weather forecasting, right? We can also just analyze the previous data there, and based upon that previous data, we can just determine what could be the weather, right? So there are a lot of applications, there are a lot of use cases with big data that could be big data could be used in vast amounts of applications, vast amount of things, right? So if we'll also talk about the real world use cases where this big data is being used, okay, it we'll be just talking about some of these things in here. Like it could be the in the education system, health system, or some other things. And then later on we'll be moving into the Netflix part as well. We'll be just talking a bit about that as well. Okay, so if we'll see the real world, some sort of real world applications in here. The first thing we will see is in the healthcare, right? So if we'll see in the healthcare, there is huge amounts of data that gets collected, right? It could be the patient's reports. It could be, let's say there's a patient, they are diagnosed for something, right? So the report is collected, right? So that's some sort of data, right? That because if you'll see, in order to like diagnose if a patient has certain disease, right, it costs some sort of money, right, because we have to do certain kinds of tests in order to like determine if a person could have some sort of disease, right? So because we have this previous data, we can just analyze that data, and based upon that, we can just like try to understand what was happening with these patients that had a particular disease, and then based upon that, we can determine if there is going to be a different patient that we want to like that is going to have that disease. We are going to check the previous records. We are going to check these the all the things that we have collected, right? And then what it will do is it will just check if the patient has a particular disease earlier on, right? And it could also reduce the cost of treatment, right? Because there are fewer chances of having to perform unnecessary diagnosis, right? Because we already have that information that if a person has this thing, like they have particular symptoms, then they could be prone to a particular disease, or they could have a particular disease, right? So because we already know those symptoms, we already know that thing. Why we know that? Because we have collected that data, we have collected all the things, that now we have analyzed that data, and now we know that if a particular person has a particular symptom, then they could be prone, or they could have a particular disease, right? So now with the help of this big data, we can just reduce that, we can just reduce the cost of the treatment, because we already know certain things, right, based upon that data we have just collected. It could also help predict outbreaks of epidemics, and also in deciding what preventive measures could be taken to minimize the effect of the same, right? As I already mentioned, that we have the data, we can already predict what could happen, right? Because if we know certain kinds of things, we can just analyze that data, and based upon the analysis that we did with that data, right, all the data that we have, we can just determine different kinds of things. We could just determine if there could be an outbreak, right, or there could be epidemic. Then we could just predict that, we could just prevent that as well. We could also take minimize the actions, right? How could we minimize the effect, right? Because we know previously there was this thing, then we gave, let's say we gave a particular medicine to that thing, and it reduced these things, right? And based upon that data, we are going to give a particular person the same thing, right? It will also avoid, as you can see on the screen, it will the number three. It helps avoid preventable disease by detecting them in the early stages. So how are we going to detect those things early stages? Because we know what are the symptoms there, right? If we don't know what are the symptoms, we are not going to predict those things, right? So that's also one point. So now we'll see how we know the symptoms, because we had the previous data, we have analyzed that data, and we know a particular person will have a particular disease if they have, like, let's say 1 2 3 4 5 symptoms, right? So how we know that these symptoms, if a particular person has these symptoms, then they will have that particular disease? As I already mentioned, the data analysis on this big data that we had, right? As and it will also prevent them from getting worse within like, which in turn makes their treatment easy and effective, right? Because if a person has a particular disease, and we would not be able to know, let's say we didn't have any data, then we won't be able to know properly. We just need to do certain kinds of tests, like we can see a lot of tests, right? But we don't know if they have a disease, they are because we don't know if had not the previous data. Then based upon the previous data, like, we can do a lot of things, right? We can predict if a person could have this kind of disease, using, we can see the symptoms, and then based upon that, we can just determine those kinds of things, right? So this is the in the healthcare, there is this is the real world application of big data. So we have analyzed this data, the big data, this previous reports, previous x-rays or different kinds of things for different kinds of patients, and based upon that we are like in healthcare department, they are predicting different kinds of things, right? If we see the real world example, there's also in the education systems, right? So in the education systems, because we will also have lots of data in the education system, right? If we'll see, we just give me a moment. Yeah. So in the education system, we would have huge amounts of data as well, right? We could have the reports like we could say the students' report cards. We could have like students, all the tests they have taken, right? And based upon that, we can just predict different kinds of things, right? We can just customize and make the dynamic learning programs, right? I think there could be a lot of these things there. There could be grading systems, career predictions, which could we could also make with the help of this previous data. So how we can do that is when we will get all these kinds of data points from different kinds of students, we could easily understand what a student likes the most or what they are good at, and based upon that we can just tell them like the different kinds of learning opportunities they can get, right? Because let's say some sort of we had 10 students, and based upon their scores, based upon their exams, we can determine different kinds of things, right? In the 10 students, there could be two students that could be good at maths, two could be good at computers, two could be good at some other subject, right? So based upon that thing, we can just tell these two students that you can just take these subjects because you are good at these things, right? Also we can reframe the course material, right? How we can reframe the course material is because based upon the previous data, as I already mentioned, that big data will be huge, it will be enormous, right? So we can just use that data, we can just analyze the students data, that uh, which subjects which subjects are good for students, right? So because we can already see which subjects are helping students in different kinds of things, right? And based upon that we can just also refrain the course material, right? And also we can just do some sort of, we can also determine the gradings, right? As well as we can determine the career predictions. How we can do that is based upon the data we got, right? We can just see what a like student is good at. As I already mentioned, with the dynamic learning program we can just do the same thing. We can just see if a person is good at maths, then he can just pursue different thing. If he is good at computer and maths and a particular subject, then we can just tell him you can just do that thing, right? So we can just give the career predictions, right, based upon this data. As I already mentioned about the weather patterns, we can also do that, right? Not only that, there are a lot of other applications as well, real world applications, but I have only mentioned only three here. So, in the weather patterns, what we can do is we can just use this big data in weather forecasting, which is actually being used, right? Because what how we are able to determine the weather for upcoming days, right? We are gathering the data from certain satellites, from certain machines, and we also have the previous data, right? And then we are just seeing all these things, we are just analyzing all these things together, and then based upon that we just predict what could be the weather for next 7 days, next month, right? So how we are doing that is the big data that we, all the data that we have gathered, either it could be from multiple years, from previous 10 years, 20 years, right? All the data that we have gathered, based upon that data we just analyze it, we just try to see different kinds of insights it is giving us, it is drawing, and then based upon that we also can predict the weather for next days, like next 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, right? Based upon this data, we can also study the global warming, right? We can also, because it could just determine like patterns of natural, like understand the patterns of natural disasters, right? Because if you'll see, if you'll just also search on the internet, there are applications of there are certain applications. I don't remember it right now, but somewhere there was, I think, this storm or something, it was also predicted, and the effects were minimized. So right now I don't remember that. So but like as I already mentioned, we can just predict different kinds of things based upon the previous data, based upon this big data, right? So in the weather, like in the weather, we can just determine weather patterns. It could be weather forecasting. It could be the global warming, right? Or it could even be the patterns of natural disasters. We can just determine all these things. So this is a brief intro about the big data. What big data is? What are some of the characteristics of big data? What are the challenges that are faced by particular uh, like the data scientists, right? And as well as like the uses of this big data, as well as some of the real world applications, right? So we just talked about these things in the big data. Now we'll be moving forward. Before that, so as Jay already told you about Geeks Olympiad, you can just participate in different kinds of contexts, and you can also just join the Geeks Olympiad now, and you can also participate in different kinds of contests there, and you can also win prizes. Just try to link will be in the description of this video. You can just go ahead and register now in order to like learn different kinds of things. There will be some sort of job opportunities as well. You can just log into there, log in and sign up there, and then you can just go ahead and just take different kinds of things, testers or contests there, and also win certain prizes. Okay. Now we'll be just moving ahead and we'll be just talking a bit about personal recommendation and the use of data analysis. Okay. So all this thing, now we'll be just talking a bit about Netflix actually. Okay. So how you stay glued with the Netflix. We'll be talking about a bit about that, like how you get a personal recommendations. It would be based upon, it actually is based upon the previous data, right? The data that the Netflix gets from you, right? It could be, as I already mentioned before, in this video. So it is all the data. It could be you liked certain video there, you liked a certain series or movie there, you just left a particular movie half the way, right? You just kept watching some other things, you just search for some other things, right? All that data gets collected by Netflix. Okay. And then all that data that gets collected, they just analyze that data, right? They try to figure out some sort of patterns, and then based upon those things they are just trying to just give you certain personal recommendations, right, as they analyze this data. So here you can also see a figure, like how different kinds of algorithms there is, this PVR, top and trending. These are some sort of algorithms that run before you get this page, right? The home page where you get all these movies and other kind of things, right? So we just talk a brief about this, like, right? How they just utilize, because data analysis is really, really important, right? You can just find a lot of courses on Geeks for Geeks there as well for I think data analysis as well as for machine learning, because these are important things and these are really great things nowadays. So this personal recommendation and the use of data analysis, it really plays a significant role in the content creation, right? Content creation and the streaming platforms like Netflix and some other things, but we'll be talking about Netflix here. So it really plays a great role when we are just talking about personal recommendations, right? Because if you will see, whenever you just come to the Netflix's homepage, there is huge amounts of these movies and series that you see, and then you just have to click on their any one of them, right? Because you are not going to search anything on Netflix, in my opinion, because whatever you just want to watch, everything will be on your home screen, because that is what you will be watching, right? Because of the personal recommendations, because they know what you watch based upon that, based upon the previous history, based upon certain kinds of things, the all the data that they have collected, which actually is this big data that I already mentioned. That big data is huge amounts of data, and in the Netflix's case, it would be this the videos that you are watching, the movies, the series that you are watching, right? So all the data that gets collected, right? Where you left this video, where you just watching, like you watched the movie, you watched a series half the way, and then you left there, right? You also, let's say, kept watching a particular scene, right? So based upon those all those things, what they do is they utilize this data analysis. They also, like, they analyze the data using data analysis techniques, right? And then they generate certain kinds of recommendation, personal recommendation based upon that data, right? What is the user's taste, right? What user keeps watching on what, and they help you discover new content, right? How they help you discover new content is based upon the data that they have gathered about you, right? This big data that they have gathered about you, right? And then they like derive certain conclusions out from that thing, right? So all the thing that is happening that with this personal recommendation, they are determining this based upon the data that have gathered, right? This big data, right? So what actually happens is I'll just give you a simple example about how this could be happening, right? If we'll just dive into deep about the recommendation system, because this is really that's going to be a huge topic in itself. So I'll just give you a simple example, okay? Let's say we have I am just running some sort of simple streaming service, okay? Now, how I'll just give you some sort of recommendations, okay? Let's say you are just watching a certain video, okay? You watched another video which was different type, which was of a different genre, different type, okay? But you just left it halfway, right? Now as I already told you, we have to like different kinds of organization gather information, and based upon that they just predict different kinds of things. So I'll also be just gathering all the data, right? So I'll gather the data that you have watched this movie full, and this movie you have watched half the way and then you left. Another movie you just kept on watching a particular scene there, okay? Then based upon that data I'll just determine what you might like, okay? So that is a simple example. But in case of Netflix, there is the previous data as well, not only of a single user. I was just talking about a single user, how I could do this, right? But in case of Netflix, the amount of data is really huge, okay? And since the data is huge, they already know what the previous users have watched it, right? Let's say there is a particular user who just like you, so they also watch the same things what you are watching, okay? And then after watching those all those things, he watched, let's say, a particular movie, okay? And he enjoyed that movie. Now, based upon that data, what Netflix is going to do is they will also see that previous data, they would analyze that, and they will also see that you are liking these movies. So if this person has liked this movie, you could also like this movie. So maybe they will give you this as a recommended movie, right? So because as I already mentioned here, I am not talking about the real Netflix's real recommendation system, because it is really a huge topic in itself, because there are a lot of things that are going there, a lot of rankings, a lot of different kinds of things. You can also see in the image there are a lot of algorithms that are going to like run, and then they are going to just use those kinds of algorithms for different kinds of things, and then they will give you this homepage, personalized homepage, right? But I'm talking about in general terms what could be happening, right? And how you are going to get these personal recommendations. It is all based upon the data, because this session was mostly about this big data. So the big data is so much important that like all the things that you see today, let's say you are just seeing a particular ad, how you are seeing a particular ad is all based upon the data they have gathered about you, right? So if you might have sometimes seen, if you are searching something on Amazon and then you just open YouTube, you'll see the same product showing in the recommendations, or you can say in the suggested or sponsored section, right? Why? Because they are gathering the data in real time, they are analyzing that data, right? And based upon that, they are giving you certain kinds of things, predictions. They are just updating their ad system. It could be either the ad system, it could be the recommendation system, right? Like every data source gets linked together later on, and then they are just these big companies, because they just share their data, you already know that. And then based upon that big data, they analyze that data, right? They just keep on just analyzing the data, and in real time they just analyze the data in real time and give you the real predictions, right? What you're watching this thing, you would like this thing, right? So the same thing is with the Netflix, okay? So because as I already mentioned that how Netflix give you these personal recommendations is all based upon the previous data, right? All this big data they are collecting, right? And if you'll see, data analysis in itself is really important for these companies, right? Because they can also determine if different kinds of people, if different kinds of customers are liking a certain certain genre, a certain movie in a particular genre, right? They can determine which like series they need to create, which movie they need to create, right? Because they are determining these kinds of things, right? So by leveraging all this viewer data, they can just see different kinds of trends in their like watching when people are watching certain kinds of things, when customers or we can say viewers are watching certain kinds of things, they can just analyze, they can just leverage all those viewing data, right? And then based upon that, they will also uh, give you like they will also create different that type of content, right? Let's say a particular audience or particular viewers are liking a particular series in particular genre, right? Let's say there could be like 50% of the audience is liking particular thing, right? Because they are analyzing this thing, they are analyzing the viewers data, they're analyzing all the trends in the like in those waves, in those kinds of things. When they have analyzed those things properly, they can just determine what content they are going to create next, right? So are they going to create a movie on a particular genre, or are they going to create a particular series on that genre, right? Because they know 50% of people, 50% of viewers like that kind of stuff, so they are going to create that thing, right? So it really really helps this data analysis. When you do this data analysis on this big data, this huge amounts of data, it would also help storytellers to improve their story, right? Let's say there's a particular we can say production, there's a particular movie, there are some sort of scenes people just keep on watching it repeatedly, okay? So because Netflix is going to analyze that data as well, that people are watching that particular scene, so based upon that they will just try to tell a story based upon like that thing, right? Because they know people enjoy that thing, they're going to keep doing those kinds of things. Now Great. Great. Okay. So mostly that was all about this how Netflix provides you the recommendation system based upon all this big data that they have collected, right? Uh, all this previous data, how they like collect that data from different kinds of viewers, right? How they just analyze that data and how they determine what a particular person is going to watch, and based upon that they just generate you a personal recommendation, right? This personal recommendation will have all the things you will watch actually, right? As you know how well the Netflix recommendation system is. I have also given you this image here, how the Netflix just there is this huge amounts of videos, huge amounts of series. It could be series plus movies, right? So there are millions or billions of those things there. Then based upon certain kinds of algorithms, as you can see in the second section, there are a lot of algorithms that are happening. It could be the algorithm for just checking what are the things that are trending, right? Or this top n algorithm, PVR algorithm. So based upon that, they will just from millions, they will just convert it into 10,000s maybe, right? And based upon that they will just do another sort of ranking for this home page, so that you will get a proper home page, that all the things that you want to watch or that you are going to watch now, right? So that is how that is done, because based upon the previous data, mostly all that big data that they have collected is that they have collected, they will analyze everything, right? They will analyze everything, and then based upon that they will just determine what you are going to like, what you are going to enjoy, right? I think mostly that was it for this personalized recommendation and the use of data analysis on this big data. Now I'll just summarize all the things that we just talked about in this video. Okay. So just a second. So in this session, Big Data Unleashed. So we talked about what big data is. Okay. So we talked about what big data is. Okay. So what is big data? As I already mentioned, it is a huge amounts of data, right? Which comes in, which has like a lot different kinds of varieties. Okay. It could be structured, unstructured, semi-structured. Okay. This the different kinds of the structured, unstructured data. It comes in a huge amount of or it is the enormous amount of data with these structured, unstructured data. Okay. And it comes in like great velocity. Okay. Which those things are called the V's. Okay. And we also talked about these three V's. First of all, we talked about these three V's, but in general there are now five V's. Basically there were these three V's, which was volume, variety, and volume, variety, and velocity. Okay, later on in like these upcoming in these coming past few years, and additional two V's were introduced: variety and value, right? Because if the data will not have any value, so what are we going to analyze it for, right? And as well as the data should be accurate. If we are going to use certain kinds of data, we are going to provide certain kinds of recommendations to the end user. We are going to provide certain kinds of we are going to show certain kinds of ads to a particular audience, particular user. We should know if the data is reliable, if it is accurate, right? If it is not accurate, how are we going to analyze that data, right? So we just talked about these characteristics of big data: volume, variety, velocity, value, and variety. After that, we also talked about the different kinds of frameworks that you can use, right? We just talked a bit about these four frameworks that you can use in order to like analyze and store the data. It could be Kafka, Cassandra, it could be Hadoop, and it could be Spark, right? So you can use these services, or you can say these frameworks, in order to analyze, in order to store the data, so that you can get these insights out from them. Okay. After that, we also talked about the challenges of big data, right? What are the challenges that big companies, big organizations face while they are like trying to analyze, trying to gather these data, right? This data. So the first thing we talked about is the data volume, right? So they should have huge amounts of volume, right? It should be scalable, right? Because the amount of data and the speed that at which it comes, it's really great, right? It is enormous, right? So they should have some sort of mechanism, some sort of way to like make the volume scale easily, right? We also talked about data curation, right? We After that, we also talked about the technology advancement, right? So we talked about in these two slides. We talked about like how they need to like it is challenging to maintain the data, right? To organize the data because the data is huge. We also talked about the technology advancement. There is the huge there is the advancement in the technology, so they also need to keep up with those things, right? After that, we talked about the use cases, right? We talked about what are different kinds of use cases and different kinds of things, right? Like there could be the product development, where companies, where organizations can like determine different kinds of things based upon the data they have gathered, right? And then they can develop their product further, right? We also talked about this predictive maintenance, right? Where we can just gather the data from sensors and different kinds of things, and based upon that data we can just determine if there could be the system failure, if there could be this mechanical failures or not, right? We also talked about how we can just improve the customer experience based upon that data, right? We have gathered different kinds of data, and then based upon that we can just show different kinds of recommendations and do different kinds of things, right? We can just eliminate different kinds of customer facing issues as well, right? Based upon that data. We also talked about how this big data is used in machine learning to train different kinds of models, right? As I already told you about Chat GPT, which is trained on huge amounts of data, this big data, right? That's why they are able to predict different kinds of things, right? After that, we also talked about some real world examples, which include the use of big data in healthcare, where we just try to determine different kinds of disease before they occur, right? How we could do that, or we can just like determine a disease earlier on, right? Based upon this data that we have already gathered, we can just see the different kinds of symptoms, and based upon that, we can just tell uh, that a particular person could have a particular disease, right? After that, we also talked about the applications, real world applications, the education system, that could be the career prediction or this grading and some other things, right? In the grading, I think I didn't explain that much, but in the grading, like you can say we can just determine who like like which student will get A grade, B grade, C grade, right? Based upon their performance of these previous examinations. Okay. We also talked about the weather patterns, how we can use this big data in determining the weather forecast and different kinds of things in the weather related stuff, right? After that, we talked about a bit about this personal recommendation and use of data analysis in case of Netflix, how they like use this big data to determine what are the things that you are going to watch. Okay. And based upon that, we just determine different kinds of things. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll just give, I think, yeah. So that is it for this session. I think now I just get back to Jay.
Thank you, Sayed. It was great session, and we learned a lot about how big data helps a lot about getting the idea about what we like on any of the OTT platform and how they suggest the similar kind of stuff. It was great interacting with you. And guys, if you have any kind of doubt, you can post it in the chat box, and Sayed will be more than happy to answer all your doubts. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And once again, I will be telling you guys, and I will be suggesting you to register at GeekO-Lympics and take the best out of it. It's the like the best thing which you can do right now is to register over there, and along with the Olympics, along with the all events, you can try out different coding questions over there. There will be a lot of interesting thing going out, right? So don't miss this opportunity. Okay, so I see no doubts coming. So I think everything was clear to everyone. So we'll be coming to the end of this session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sayed. It was
Yeah, thank you so
a really,
much.
really great session. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
so,
So we'll be ending this
yeah,
session here only.
yeah. Thank you, everyone.